They say that I'm on the road, maybe I just lost it. These nights keep on taking toll, find me out here on my own.
Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be some clips and me explaining the exercise we were doing from the young horse training at Onley. I think it was back in July 2019. So the first videos are of my 4-year-old Jaguar, and then the other videos will be of my 7-year-old Iris. You'll see the difference because of the heights they're jumping. So to start with the young horses, we just worked them around the arena. I think it was a group of about 4 young 4-year-olds. So we just wanted to get them all used to, 1, being in an indoor arena, and 2, having other horses in the arena with them. So we're just working them all around the outside of the arena. Unfortunately, Mum wasn't actually there to video, but at the very start, when we first trotted over a pole on the floor, Jaguar thought it would be a great idea to go rodeoing around the arena. It was quite funny. I did manage to stay on somehow. But I mean, typical 4-year-olds, can't really expect anything less. But yeah, it was very funny. But as you can see, he did settle back down and work really nicely in the canter. He was actually very relaxed, and saying it was his first time in an indoor arena and his first time working with other horses, his first time away from home. So it was a big deal for him, and I'm really, really pleased how he did come out and very quickly start listening to me and relax into his work. So the first very simple exercise we did was just 2 canter poles, a good distance apart, and all we wanted to do was let them canter over the first pole, stay on the correct lead, and keep a nice level canter all the way down to the second pole, which, as you can see, he did really nicely. So I was very pleased with that. We just did the exact same on the other rein. It's really important that before you start jumping, the horses are relaxed and very much listening to you in the canter, and they're waiting when you ask them to, they're extending when you ask them to, and there's a pheasant, and they're just generally relaxed and soft. So as you can see down here to this pole, he waited for me, waited down the distance really nicely, and popped over the second pole absolutely lovely. So as far as I was concerned, he's now ready to jump. So the whole point of the day 1 training was working on related distances. So this was just our warm-up distance. As you can see, he likes to give the jumps plenty of room. But the whole point of jumping down that first distance, it was 6 strides. And what you didn't want to do is end up underneath the second fence on the 6th stride. So you jump the first fence, ask them to wait for 2 or 3 strides, and then you can put some leg on for 2 or 3 strides and get to the second fence waiting, but on a nice good canter. The last thing you want to do is to be getting to the second fence, giving them a pull or getting underneath it. So what you want to do is get there and be able to put a little bit of leg on so they can then use themselves and jump it. And again, with the 4-year-olds, it's just making sure we keep it all really nice and small for them. They don't need to be jumping big fences. They just need to learn the slightly more technical side of it and the correct way of going. As you can see, he does make a lovely shape over them. And with them as well, it doesn't matter if they land on the wrong leg, that will come with time. So if they land on the wrong leg, you just ride them straight after the fence, turn the corner, and then correct it. So the next line we did was a small fence and 6 strides to a 2-strided double. So the last thing you want to be doing is jumping really strong into the double, because then the horses don't think they've got enough room and they struggle to jump out. So you'd rather be a little bit closer to the double, so they jump in, then you can put a little bit of leg on to come out. So you can see at this next fence, he does actually have a fence down coming into the double. I really wasn't fussed about that at all. The only way they can learn is by making mistakes. So my main concern was just to keep him as straight as I could down this line. You can see that he's getting tired, but just to keep him as straight as I could and keep a level canter all the way down, which he actually did really well at, and we left it on that. Next up was 7-year-old Iris's turn. She was later in the day with, I think most of the rest of her group were 8-year-olds, with maybe one other 7-year-old. But yeah, so she was one of the youngest and greenest in the group, but she's so talented and it didn't make any difference to her. So again, we just started off by working them over the poles, making sure we've got a nice relaxed canter, but forward. What you don't want to be doing is having a too quiet of a canter. They need to be working underneath you and travelling. You can see going down this line of poles how forward and straight she stayed and how nicely she went down on the 7 strides. As you can see, the older horses didn't need nearly as much time as the 4-year-olds did to settle. So after a little bit of warm-up, we started jumping. You can see that Iris was a bit feisty. There's a pole there to make sure we come nice and straight to this first oxer. There was a line of 3 fences, so it was 4 strides and then 3 strides, which she jumped really nicely, and then I made sure I rode it nice and straight afterwards, right into the corner. And then we did the exact same the other way again, made sure we got nice and straight to the first fence and then stayed straight all the way down the line. Normal 3 and then a normal 4, so all I wanted to do was sit up with my body to keep her light on the front end and then just keep my leg there to allow her to keep travelling down the distances. Next line was the small upright, 6 strides to the double. Again, just keeping nice and straight, a little bit of leg when I got to the oxer to make sure she jumped it nicely, and then ride straight again afterwards right out into the corner. It's so important to ride straight after your fences so the horses don't start cutting corners. Same again, back the other way, again nice and straight right out into the corner before I turned, look. 2 strides in, lovely, and then steady up for the 6. And lovely again. She jumped really nicely through there. I'm very happy with how she went. The last line to have a jump down before we did the whole course was this one, the plank 6 strides to the oxer. So I made sure I kept her head up a little bit to keep her light off her front end, and then just kept my leg there to allow her to travel the whole way down it. She jumped it really nicely, so we just did the same the other direction. Got straight for it, jumped the oxer first, and then sat up, kept my leg there and went a nice 6 to the plank, which she also jumped really nice. Then you can see I rode her really straight afterwards right up to the wall. So now we're back to the orange line with the double. So it's very important that I didn't stand too far off the second fence, which was the oxer going into the double, because then I would have jumped in too strong and been too strong out. So I needed to make sure I got close enough to the oxer so she could jump up and land normally, and then put a little bit of leg on to jump out. And then same back the other way. Coming around the corner, you can see that this last fence was quite big, so I wanted to be a little bit more forward out the corner. So I jumped in a bit stronger, and then she had to wait for the oxer, so she was a little bit closer to it, and then it gave me a bit more distance on the 6 strides. Now it's the same again from the plank to the white oxer. So I didn't want to jump over the plank too strong and make too much distance to the oxer. So I wanted a nice, slightly deeper shot to the plank, steady up for a few strides, and then keep my leg there to keep her travelling to it. So you get to the plank on a slightly more forward stride and are able to put leg on to get her to jump it. Sorry, the oxer, not the plank. Back round the corner, right into the corner to this oxer. 4 strides up to this. So I wanted to be a little bit closer because the 3 strides was riding short. So I didn't want to jump into the 3 strides too strong. So again, really using my corner, get her right back to the double, nice and straight to that. And again, I was a little bit more forward out the corner. It meant she had to shorten up in the double, and it gave me a lot more room down that 6 strides, which otherwise, if I'd have jumped out the double too strong, it would have ridden too short. Then just to finish off, we did this whole course in reverse. So you can see that I had a nice canter to start with, not too strong, but just nice, listening to me. Jumped this orange first. I didn't want to be too strong into the double, so I made sure I made enough distance down the 6. As you can see, the upright coming out was quite large, which she jumped really nicely. Then we went back to the green and yellow, so right into the corner and straight. A little bit more forward out the corner, which then made the 3 strides a little bit shorter, and then gave me room to put a bit of leg on down the 4, rather than having to take a pull down the 4. And coming back round to this oxer, I didn't want to be too forward over the oxer because I didn't want to make the 6 too short. And then you can see that I just sat up and waited, and she jumped the plank absolutely beautifully. And then nice and straight afterwards, and kept her working in the canter. So we're back to 4-year-old Jaguar for day 2 of the training. The second day was about jumping a course. This was his first time jumping a course actually. And it was all about putting into practice what we'd done the day before on related distances, and incorporating that into a course. So making sure the canter is relaxed and balanced, and they're listening and going forward when you ask, coming back when you ask, all the things like that we'd practiced on day one, now to be used around a course. So as you can see, he started by just having a little loose trot round. There wasn't much listening going on to start with, where it was a bit spooky, but you can see here in the canter that he soon started to relax and listen to me, which was nice to see, as he did come quite quickly. After a little bit of warm up on the flat, you can see we came to some jumps. So there's a placing pole that we just trotted to nicely, and then encouraged them to pick up canter over the placing pole and then jump the jump, which he actually did really nicely. And again here, trot to it, little bit of leg over the pole, and get them to pop over the jump nicely. So what this teaches them to wait, not to run to the fence. They wait for you until you put a bit of leg on in front of the fence, and then they get to the fence and jump, rather than running you into it. You can see that the back bar went on it, and suddenly it had to be jumped extra big. Again, sassy. And he did actually nearly jump me out of the arena after that. But I'm not going to crop stuff like that out, as I think it's important for you guys to see that not everything is perfect with young horses. So with the horses all warmed up, it was time to jump round a little course. This was his first time round a course, so I genuinely had no idea what he was going to be like, but he was actually really, really good. So the first fence didn't get on video, but he jumped it really nicely. He waited nicely to fence 2 and popped over it really sweetly. And then coming around the corner to fence 3, we've got a different angle for videoing, because you couldn't really see it on the other video. Pop the oxer, ask him to wait to the double, so you're not too strong in, which he went really nicely. A little bit hesitant, but it's to be expected with a baby. Now round the corner to this, got nice and straight for this, you don't want them darting out the side, and then rode this dog leg. Nearly running mum over.
Good girl, well
But
done,
she actually
Eloise.
jumped really nicely. And here I just sorted his leg out. And then I just quickly picked up canter again and carried on around the course. He jumped that fence really nicely and stayed nice and straight after it, which is really nice, and went right into the corner, which was good to see. They need to be using their corners and listening to you. He actually turned really balanced back to that, which I like, and he got to it and really jumped it and changed leg over it and landed on the right lead, which is really nice to see. Videoing keeps cutting off, but yeah, you can see here as well I was on the wrong leg, so again I just brought him back to trot, carried on in canter into this double, which he popped through beautifully. Really nice that he wanted to jump through his doubles, and obviously being a big horse, it's harder for him because he jumps in and doesn't have much space at all. But yeah, he jumped in and backed himself off of the oxer, which was good. And coming to the last fence, he jumped it really nicely as well. So I was really, really pleased with him, and we did leave him on that. Unfortunately, there isn't too much footage of Iris from this day, but being an older horse, they didn't really need the experience of just jumping around a course for the sake of it. So we practiced some jump off turns on them to start teaching them to come around the corner and expect a fence to be there. So just to start with, I just picked up canter and popped over a little fence. We'd already warmed up and done all our warm-up jumps, but she'd been stood around for a minute, so I just popped her over this small fence down this bottom end just to let her jump something, and then I started with the exercise. So this dog leg did actually ride as a 7 strides, however, being in a jump off, you want to cut the line and come 6 strides, which you can see I did quite nicely here. After this, I just kept her head up a bit, kept cantering all the way around the corner, turning back to that orange fence. And she jumped that really nicely as well. And then I moved her forward after it. Obviously I didn't gallop her around because it's just training. We didn't want to put unnecessary wear on her legs. Turned her back to that oxer after a couple of strides, and she jumped it really well. And then just kept a nice strong canter back inside to this double, which again she jumped really, really nicely. And then after it we turned, and again just keeping a nice fluent canter the whole way around, keeping a rhythm. Turned back to the last fence, which again she jumped really, really well, and then just kept her cantering nice and forwards after it. I really hope you enjoyed this vlog of how we train the young horses, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
They say that I'm on the road, maybe